Well, each week, a group of insiders joins me to offer perspective on some of the week's top stories. This week, sounding off on a major Purdue-Infosys partnership. Indy scores another San Francisco Nonstop, and one of the state's biggest conventions is back. Our insiders this week are Visit Indy's Senior Vice President of Marketing and Communications, Chris Gall. Also, Center for Business and Economic Research, Mike Hicks. He's back from an earlier appearance on the show this week. And KSM Location Advisors President, Katie Culp. And welcome one and all to the Insiders. And Katie, I'll start with you on this Purdue-Infosys partnership, which was announced late in the week. We talked about it at the top of the show. This is a pretty big deal. Purdue will be training all 10,000 employees that Infosys has talked about hiring in the U.S., including about 2,000 here. But there's research elements. It's going to be a physical presence. It's going to be a really, really big partnership.
Yeah, I think one of the most noteworthy things about it is that it'll be supporting multiple campuses, and it speaks to how strong internationally even Purdue University is with regard to its training programs. But here you go, Mitch Daniels does it again, being entrepreneurial and crafting a program that works for a specific company.
And the impact too, because this is the latest deal as you suggest, but there have also been recent deals announced with Microsoft and Lilly and other big name corporate players. And a big piece of that is that connection to students and the hands-on experience and those types of things.
Well, with low unemployment, I think workforce development is getting a lot more attention from big employers, small and medium, than it used to. And I think when it works really well is when you get partnerships with kind of just a few entities instead of through all these silos of government.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Daniels is a disruptor, and God knows higher education needs disrupting. I think the central element to this is now Purdue is connecting to and delivering education in a way that probably has not been done on a scale of this level before. So importantly, this is a long-term relationship. They're going to be doing this 10, 15, 20 years, and big money maker probably for Purdue, big money saver for Infosys, win-win there.
Yeah, and Chris, Katie talked about that international globalization, if you will, and how that's changed with a company like Infosys looking to put 2,000 people probably in downtown Indianapolis, and how that changes the face and the culture and the vibe in downtown.
Yeah, it again puts the state in the pole position as a place where we're progressive. It's no big surprise that Governor Daniels can broker these deals. He's in his sweet spot, and I think he's sitting back and making these deals is where he should be, and it's benefiting the state, so it's fun to see.
Yeah, also had a deal announced this week, Physiology, a really cool analytics, entertainment analytics company, if you will, acquired by an LA-based firm. MarketCast. Katie, I know they're a client of yours, right? So you have some knowledge of that. What does this deal represent? You know?
I think it's amazing to have a firm that is hired by the big movie production companies
to be
based in
here.
Yeah, right. And this infusion of equity is just going to allow them to grow more quickly and make more of an impact, and it's great to see.
Yeah. Also had news this week, speaking of jobs, as we were earlier in workforce, such a big issue in the state of Indiana. Governor Holcomb and Blair Milo, the new cabinet member focused on talent, going around the state unveiling this next level jobs initiative. And there's money involved, $20 million to target certain areas around the state. And again, they've made a big deal this week going around the state and talking about this. How important, or your take on this, Mike? Because workforce is such a huge issue.
Right, so we spend $1 billion on workforce development issues. We really struggle with it like every other state. Mayor Milo, now Secretary Milo, is a perfect person to do this. One of the big takeaways I think that she ought to take is what we can do, as Katie mentioned, to break down silos by going to the federal government and asking for block grants in lieu of structured programs, and at the same time better craft what we're doing at state, delivering these sorts of things. It's a long battle.
Do you think there's the intent to do that, or the interest in doing that and getting creative, looking at different kind of outside the box ideas?
Oh, I think there has to be, and certainly Steve Braun's doing that. The Ivy Tech is attempting this, and I think at the end of the day, the big contribution that Blair Milo brings, not as being foot on the ground as a mayor for a number of years, but really being able to wrap up what's wrong with the system, take it to D.C. to a Congress that's going to accommodate the wishes of a state like Indiana, and kicking some ideas to Washington so that we can have better control of what we're doing in the state and share ideas with other states as well.
Is that the challenge, do you think, Katie, in terms of that siloed situation? There needs to be more of a cohesive, maybe, approach?
I think so. You've got a lot of well-intended and smart people who are trying to tackle this issue, but they really are separated. And if we could, there's DWD and IEDC and Ivy Tech and Marion College, all these institutions that have great capabilities, and they try to work together, but their infrastructure is such it's hard to do so. I just hope we keep improving in this area.
Have a lot of topics this week, so we want to try to get through all of them. A chamber study commissioned by the chamber, Ball State. Mike and his team at Ball State did the study, focusing on school systems around the state, and essentially it shows that smaller school districts, the students there are not performing as well as peers in larger school districts around the state. Real challenges with resources and those types of things. I want to get Mike's take, but Chris, you mentioned
it's eye-opening.
Yeah.
It's painful to read this report that the Indiana Chamber put out. And the discrepancy, if you have 2,000 or less kids in your corporation, they're not performing as well in I-STEP and going to college and getting prepared for the real world and that workforce that we need to keep here and keep growing. I would encourage everyone watching to read this, understand it, and try to help the state with this, because it's a big, big problem.
You and Kevin Brenninger from the Chamber say solving this thing is going to involve more school consolidations, right?
Right. I think there's no way around it. I mean, the big key is most of us want to have smaller schools. We want to have smaller classrooms and better compensated teachers and more programs for our kids and better outcomes at the end of it. And the only way I think we can do that right now in the resource-constrained environment they're in is to cut overhead costs. So these schools that have fewer than 2,000 kids, 94% of them are located by another school with fewer than 2,000 kids. Almost over 90% are losing population. Those folks need to take a serious look at preserving their schools and classroom experience by slashing overhead, consolidating corporations, and moving into really the late 20th century. Here we are into the second decade of the 21st.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to follow that going forward. A couple of issues right up your alley, Chris. The Indianapolis International Airport Authority announcing another Nonstop, getting close to 50 now, but importantly, a second Nonstop to San Francisco, the Silicon Valley and the tech-rich area out there is a big deal.
It's based on demand, that tech sector in San Francisco, but moreover here needs to travel. 5 years ago, the Achilles heel of Indianapolis as it related to a lot of workforce development, economic development deals, tourism infrastructure was nonstop daily flights. We are filling in nicely because of the airport, and that Achilles heel is healed. And we're moving forward. So it's a big deal to keep adding these nonstops to tech-rich cities like San Francisco.
Yeah, Katie, because it has been such a huge issue for the business community, tech community, and others as well, but to have now close to 50 nonstops, I think, what does that do for economic development?
It really helps the ability to attract office users. So I love to see us gaining strength here. I still think we have a little bit of way to go, but we're moving in the right direction.
Also this weekend, a huge convention, one of the state's largest conventions, Gen Con. Chris just took off his garb and all of his face paint and all that stuff to appear on the show. But Chris, 50th anniversary for this event.
For 2 years, we've been planning for Gen Con 50 because it's the city's largest convention, and we were in jeopardy of losing them. They're sticking around, and this is big business, $70 million in economic impact. We need more hotels to keep them growing in Indianapolis. That's what's on our minds.
We've talked about it for a long time. You've talked about it for a long time. Is that going to happen?
It is, and it's going to be done strategically. We got a hotel feasibility study we're wrapping up, and it's not just Gen Con. There's numerous conventions we're in jeopardy of losing if we don't add more hotels into the inventory. Okay,
we have about 45 seconds. St. Elmo launching a burger joint downtown. What do you think? Good idea? It's that St. Elmo empire that's expanding. Harry and Izzy's now burger study.
I mean, you're taking us there right after this segment, right?
Oh, yeah,
So I think the big key here is retail has been suffering, but restaurants have been growing. This is evidence that Indianapolis is adjusting to the market. One of these days, it's not going to be newsworthy that we have new tech employment, new Nonstop, and a great new restaurant. Indy is really exploding.
Yeah, a lot of activity to be sure. We've got through a lot of stuff on the Insiders this week. Chris Gall, Mike Hicks, Katie Culp, thanks very much. And
Thanks,
we'll talk
Gary.
to you in just a minute.